Hey everyone, welcome to Magic the Gathering for Advanced Players. I'm Matt Sperling. I've had some success over the last 5 years. I've top-aided 3 Magic Pro Tours or Mythic Championships, and I want to kind of share some of the preparation and ways of thinking that helped me get there. I want to help you improve your game by thinking about Magic in these ways. Magic is incredibly complex. You're not going to make every decision correctly. I'm not going to make every decision correctly. But if we can share ideas about how to think through things in a more comprehensive way, taking account of more information, using that information, how do we use it? How do we make trade-offs? How do we analyze risks? If we can look at games and learn from that, we're going to be one step ahead of the folks we're playing against. If we can use this recorded video that we have in front of us here, that we've got now access to more hours than you could possibly watch, we can use that as a tool to slow down and break things down in a way that is really hard to do staring over the board in real time in a real game that you're playing, that you're watching. That's a really hard thing to do, but now we've got it on video. We can pause it. We can think about it more. We can crunch some numbers if we need to crunch some numbers. We can rewind it and try it again. So this is part of my preparation that I do when I'm preparing for an event. I'll try to find some videos of that format. I'll try to look at what other people are doing, and if I notice something they're doing slightly differently, I'll think about whether I agree, disagree, and why. Even if maybe I'm new to a deck, I'm going to use that video. So let's go through that together. Let's do one of these. Here we've got a game from the Modern Madness event that Channel Fireball ran at Magic Fest Las Vegas this year. We've got kind of an exhibition match between Cedric and Gavin, 2 well-known personalities in the community playing 2 well-known decks. Storm for Cedric and Hardened Scales for Gavin. Here we've got game 2 with Cedric up a game. And I think it'll be hopefully an interesting game to just kind of look through decisions that were made. If we had a chance to slow down, if Cedric and Gavin had a chance to slow down, what decisions might they make differently, or what might they look at? All right, so let's dive in. First, I guess we can take a look at the deck list. That's probably wise. So this is the Storm list that Gavin's playing in this exhibition event to try to determine what the best deck in Modern is, which is a silly thing, but that's not what this video is about. What this is about is going to be this deck pitted up against a Hardened Scales deck. So you see Cedric playing this Storm deck. It's a pretty, I'd say stock. It's got Grape Shot, Catapult. All right, well, clearly that's supposed to be Grape Shot, but it's a pretty stock list among lists that aren't playing, a main deck pieces of the puzzle type of approach. This is a Gifts Ungiven approach, and you see some fairly standard choices. The sideboard, if you're thinking about Hardened Scales, Lightning Bolt gives you a little bit of removal. Rebuild, clearly, a Haymaker. And then some other tools, Echoing Truth, if you feel like you have to get, a sideboard card off the board, or even a lethal threat. And then Dismember, Abrade, Aria of Flame, some additional tools. Hardened Scales, you've got this Mythic Championship Barcelona deck list for second place. Again, not a ton of surprises. This is actually a list that I'd prepared for this event. I played Hagak in the tournament, but I'd tried this deck out. This deck has some choices that I don't prefer the way I see the deck. I don't like cards like Metallic Mimic, I think are too low impact. Throne of Geth, I think is fine, but I kind of strive to do better, maybe something interactive. Although I understand why in the Hagak tournament specifically, interactive choices weren't made, but now that Hagak's banned, if you look thinking about this deck, thinking about choices, you probably do want to get interactive, meaning can I find a way to play a Dismember main deck? That sort of thing. Animation Module, just never a card that I've been impressed with, so not a card that you're going to see 3 of in my Hardened Scales list, but, this player disagreed, and it's certainly a playable list, and whatever you do with these last couple choices, just like with the Hagak deck, whatever you do with those last 6 to 8 slots, you're going to have a very solid deck. Here you have it. And then critically in the sideboard, Grafdigger's Cage can shut down Past in Flames. That's sometimes relevant, certainly. Damping Sphere is really a bullet for a Storm deck. And then Dismember can help you actually have a way to interact with the Brawls and the Goblin Electromancers. So a lot of cards that coming out of the sideboard to make this deck an interactive deck. And we are in a game 2 in the game that we're going to be analyzing. So we expect that some or all of these tools will be brought into play. while the Storm deck is going to have some more removal and some ways to kind of get around some of that hate should it show up.
Evan Verhey on Hardened Scales and Cedric Phillips, CDP, on Storm.
First a note, you'll notice that I'm watching the game in 1.5x speed. This is a tool, look, Paper Magic is pretty slow. They're shuffling. There's people sitting there thinking about what to do next. You have a luxury when you're watching replays on YouTube or on Twitch, as I'm doing here, that you can play it at 1.5x or 2x if you want. And I think that that's a tool you should think about whether you want to take advantage of that. And again, you've got, if it's going too fast, you got the ability to rewind it and slow it down. For me, 1.5x feels about right. I can see what's going on, and it's at a pace where I'm actually getting some leverage out of that. I'm seeing more and hopefully learning more. Obviously, if I did it too fast, if I was at 2x or more, arguably I'm no longer able to see what's going on. So you pick a speed that works for you. But for me, I'm going to be pausing along the way and kind of use the 1.5x to kind of get through some of the setup.
Phillips already winning game number 1. What's the matchup looking like here in the abstract?
Well, Storm is not a deck we've seen a lot of in Modern lately. It's traditionally pretty fast. Scales probably about the same speed.
Okay. So we had an accelerated video of the shuffling that Channel Fireball provided, and then I also had it 1.5x. So that was obviously quick, but that's great. We don't need to see shuffling. So what we can see in the pause here is a player hand on the right, and we can talk about Cedric's keep on the draw. Island, Shivan Reef, Past in Flames, Pyretic Ritual, Serum Visions, Manamorphose. It's an automatic keep. You've got Serum Visions, you've got 3 land, you've got a Ritual, Manamorphose. So does it have everything you need? No. The most critical missing pieces, one of those creature mana accelerators, Baral, Electromancer. Critically, there's no card here to answer an opponent's, orb, what's it called, that shuts down the Damping Sphere, rather. Shutting down the Damping Sphere could really turn this hand off, but we're never mulliganing Serum Vision's hand. So, okay, so let's just think about what we have. Not that we're questioning this mulligan decision. It looks pretty automatic, but let's think about what we've gotten and what we're looking for.
Doesn't really disrupt Storm very much. I don't think Walking Ballista affects them much, except it can kill an Electromancer or something like that.
Maybe a Baral at a stretch, but that's difficult.
Yeah, so probably a pretty close matchup. The play first is probably huge.
Okay, so the Serum Visions, the card drawn is Baral, Chief of Compliance. It's a little bit hard to see, but I'll let you know. It's Baral. And now there's a scry happening.
Yes, would be that whoever's on the play is probably a massive favorite.
Well, here it's going to be Gavin Verhey, well, at least in this, after having gone down a game number 1, obviously, and the perfect start for him as well in hard.
So a top and bottom there, and it looked like a red card, but I'm not exactly sure which. We'll have to wait for next turn. So now with Baral in hand, the game plan is kind of, there's one of the missing pieces has shown up. We're going to, against Hardened Scales, an opponent who kept 7 and has Hardened Scales, we may be facing a really fast draw. It's great to have a creature that will help us accelerate.
Hardened Scales. Now, pretty obviously, if a deck is named after a card, and they can play that card with some level of, reliability, the deck's going to do pretty well. And turn on Hardened Scales, perfect.
Yeah, Paul Rietzel coined that rule a long time ago. He said if a deck is named after a card, counter the card, kill the card, whatever. Yep. There's a reason the deck is named after a card.
Exactly right. Yeah, and there's definitely a reason that Hardened Scales is named after this card. The deck is named after the card here. It is, okay, let's put it in these terms. How well does Hardened Scales do without the card Hardened Scales? It's like pretty medium, right?
Yeah. It's you're casting 2 mana for a 1 with Walking Ballista as opposed to a 2/2. Your Earthbound Workers 1 mana 1/1 instead of a 2/2. That's a big power down.
It can still do some cool stuff with Arcbound Ravager, with Hangerback Walker, Walking Ballista, what have you. But when the fact that it can move counter.
Okay, stop. So, first of all, I'm glad we're in 1.5x, both because of that banter is unbearable. But no, really, players tanking there about what to take with Ancient Stirrings. So I paused the video, and we want to pause our thought process. When an opponent plays a card like Ancient Stirrings, they're looking through a zone and picking a card, and they have to reveal that information. We have to think about what does that tell us about the opponent's hand. Here, Ancient Stirrings usually doesn't find a land in this particular deck where there's so many threats. The fact that the opponent thought about it means they likely were thinking, do I need a land? Do I need a threat? So when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, opponent took a land, so my opponent may be land light, but they didn't take a land quickly, so they may not be their only other land. It may have been something marginal, a welding jar versus a land. It may be that there's no third land, but they had the second land. Now they have the third land, but they passed on something like Ravager. I mean, we don't know exactly what it was, but we need to be factoring that into how we play. If we have a play, as we will shortly, that involves some kind of mana denial or has a mana impact, well, it's good to know the opponent isn't sitting on something like land, Mox and a bunch of stuff, because otherwise Forest would be an unlikely tank and then take. So it's also, you want to, from Gavin's perspective, if you're this is for advanced players, if you take a while on Ancient Stirrings, be aware that you're giving away information like I'm using that information, right? So I want to either use a consistent amount of time, but because it's a timed round, I don't want to always be tanking. So I really need to be comfortable enough with the deck that I can make those kinds of decisions in a relatively consistent amount of time. All right, let's dive back in.
Around so much with Arcbound, with Llanowar Reborn, with all of these other cards that manipulate +1/+1 counters. Hardened Scales, especially in multiples here, Ben, is that you're making a profit every time.
Right, but also remember, Cedric's playing a combo deck. He's not going to have to grind through everything Hardened Scales.
All right, so Cedric's first, I should say second decision of the game. So Manamorphose was the card that got put on top. So now Cedric has Manamorphose, Pyretic Ritual, Past in Flames, Shivan Reef, but one hits board, so now one Shivan Reef, and then that Brawl. The first decision of the game is, do I play Brawl on turn 2, or do I wait and play it on turn 3? Cedric doesn't really spend too much time considering playing turn 2 Brawl, even though the opponent has exactly, 6-7 ways to get rid of it. There are 4 Walking Ballistas, which thanks to 2 Hardened Scales would be big enough, even if only played at X equals 1, they'd be 3/3, that you could sacrifice that and trade it with a Brawl. And there's 3 Dismembers in the sideboard. Assuming all 3 of those got brought in, there's 3 more ways of killing the Brawl. And so, yeah, exposing the Brawl doesn't feel great, but let's talk about what the trade-offs are. This is a really important moment in the game. Even though it was a quick land go, kind of automatic perhaps, if you play the Brawl, the opponent's tapped out, so the opponent's going to have to commit mana to a Dismember if they want to Dismember it, or 2 mana and a Walking Ballista if they want to get rid of the Walking Ballista. And if we don't play our Brawl, so that's good and bad, right? Well, so if that happens, we lose our Brawl and we're now stuck with a hand that can only make 1 mana more than the lands that it has, because it only has 1 Pyretic Ritual. And the Manamorphose is cantrip, but they don't themselves get you extra mana unless you have a Brawl or an Electromancer. And so we lose the ability to do that. We lose the ability to play the Brawl for 2 and then start going Pyretic Ritual, Manamorphose. Well, that's 5 mana. I mean, that sounds great, right? So we lose that. And so that's, I think, why Cedric is probably in a kind of automatic pattern of I don't want to expose this Brawl to removal. But if you think a little bit deeper, opponent has 2 Hardened Scales out and is very likely to do something pretty threatening on their next turn. If it's the Walking Ballista that we were worried about, meaning Walking Ballista, one of the cards that would quote-unquote punish us for playing the Brawl, well, we're not going to be in much better shape if the Ballista hits the table, goes to 3 counters, and then let's say something else hits the table, and who knows what that something else might be. It could simply be a land go. It could be something slightly more explosive, whether that's a third Hardened Scales or an Arcbound Worker or a module. Damping Sphere could be hitting the board. So there's different ways the next turn could go. But does having the Brawl in our hand actually put us in a better spot in those situations? Well, we don't have a way to get Walking Ballista off the table, so it's kind of just sitting there, sort of waiting to gun down Brawl. Now, we got to think ahead in a situation like this. So what does that mean our next turn is going to be? Well, we're only going to have 3 mana on our third turn. We're likely not going to want to play Brawl into a Ritual, because then our Brawl will die in response. We'll actually have fewer mana than we would have, so we'll actually be down mana. So at that point, we're probably looking to go to turn 4 and do some instant speed ritualing, but we don't even have a 4th land. So it gets a little bit dicey. So I'm not sure that it's better against Ballista. It might be slightly better. Also, the 6 other copies of Brawl or Electromancer in our deck are no longer going to be really good draws, because we're going to get choked on mana. We haven't used the 2 mana that we haven't played this turn. So I think if my opponent's going to play Walking Ballista, I think I probably still just want to put the Brawl out. Now, what about Dismember? Well, the nice thing is we're forcing our opponent to hold up that green mana, and we don't have to play the Brawl on turn 3. So there's a nice little mana denial thing going on there. I mean, pause the video and think about that if that doesn't make sense to you. So if I don't have the Brawl out yet, but my opponent has Dismember as the answer, well, they can't really tap all their mana. So, however, what am I going to do against that open mana? So again, 2 Hardened Scales out, it doesn't take much to play something threatening. Even an Inkmoth Nexus would do it, but certainly, something like a Ravager. Okay, now it's got 3 counters on it. Even like an Arcbound Worker and then a Mox. And I mean, there's a lot of different things Hardened Scales can do on this turn 3 that are threatening because 2 Hardened Scales are in play. So when one of those things happens and there's a mana left over, then and our opponent here, we have to assume, is wise enough to not tap out with Dismember in hand if they have a 3rd land, and we have a sense that they do because they took a land after tanking with that Ancient Stirrings. It could have been about which land to take, but we're going to assume they've got a 3rd land. Okay, so against Dismember on our turn 3, we don't know they have Dismember, so are we going to go for it? If we play Baral, and then let's say we go Manamorphose, then Baral is going to die in response, and we're going to kind of end up having traded the Baral for the Dismember anyways, but now we've kind of used a ritual, a Manamorphose that we didn't necessarily want to use, and so it feels like we're not really far enough ahead of the game. And then lastly, so what's the last option? The opponent doesn't have removal. Well, there's actually 2 other options. Opponent doesn't have removal, and opponent taps out with Dismember. Opponent doesn't have removal. Yeah, putting Baral in play turn 2 is going to be absolutely huge for us. We're going to be a big favorite to win on the following turn, and we have a lot more playability against Damping Sphere, one of the cards our opponent could be playing on their next turn. So it's nice to have that 3 mana and the Baral when you untap against a card like that, because we might be cycling Manamorphose, using cantrips to try to find a way to get that off the board. So Baral has a lot of upside, and then the downside, playing it. So if the opponent has Ballista or has the Dismember and chooses to play a strategy that doesn't put Ballista on the board and doesn't leave a mana up for Dismember, then the opponent might just die on the spot. That's certainly a possibility. I would discount that against a stronger player. I think Gavin is. So that's a really important moment to zoom in on, and that's kind of what this video series is about. Here, I think I would have played the Baral, even though a more typical play pattern is you hold your 2-mana creature, play it, go off. Against a deck that actually doesn't have that much removal and would have to use one of their premium cards to 1-for-1, I would play the Baral.
Mates or anything, Cedric's going to try and combo off. And it's turn 2, and Cedric's still at 20. So that's something you're pretty happy to see as a combo deck. If you look at Cedric's hand, he's kind of amassing resources. Now, the first real choice of the game here, Cedric opted not to play Baral on his turn. The reason he did that is because, specifically with double Hardened Scales out, a Walking Ballista will come into play with 3 counters as a 3/3. You can go off at instant speed in this deck. So Cedric choosing to hold the Baral, figuring he'll play Baral, and then he'll just start comboing off.
Like he wants immediate value from the Baral.
Yes, and if we only saw 1 Hardened Scales in play, I think I would have expected him to play it. But with 2 out, knowing a Walking Ballista just takes it out, I think he chose to hold it.
Yeah.
Now, this is also post-sideboard. We don't have the players list in front of us, and we didn't see them sideboard. It's possible that the Scales player boarded in a few Dismembers or something like that. Even though Storm isn't a creature deck, they do rely pretty heavily on their creatures to empower them going off. So if you have a few effective removal spells for those Barals or Electromancers or both, then you do generally bring them in.
And this is a great, actually a really, really good turn here for Phillips with a second opt as well. It means he's not wasting any mana, and that means that passing the turn, even after having not cast Baral, he's getting full use out of his second turn now. Double Arcbound Worker, double Hardened Scales for Verhey, but now Phillips with 3 mana, Baral ready to go, double Manamorphose, Pyretic Ritual, Past in Flames. I mean, even at this stage, no gifts ungiven, anything else like that, I would say Phillips, the odds-on favourite here to really get some heat happening this turn.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're going to see it. He's going to start with Electromancer, I assume, because it lowers the cost of Manamorphose, and then start going, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, the Baral also...
Yeah, or Baral, yeah, either one. But the Electromancer being harder to cast, that's...
And the gifts ungiven.
But yeah, Baral and Electromancer are not particularly different here. My guess is Electromancer, but either way. And then, you just start ritualing off because it lowers the cost of Manamorphose and Pyretic Ritual.
So usually, Manamorphose, cost 2 mana, you gain 2 mana, draw a card. In this situation, it becomes what we call a ritual. A ritual, named after the, of course, very famous Dark Ritual. A card that gains you more mana than...
All right, so a few things have happened. Cedric has had opt in his hand, and so that may have factored into the decision to not play Baral turn 2. Now you still end up ahead of mana if you play Baral, and then on your next turn you opt. You've only invested 1 instead of 2, but that's less free mana if you think, okay, I'm gonna have to opt in my next turn. So it makes it a little bit better. And then here playing Baral and choosing from among Manamorphose to get the party started, you can either fire off Pyretic Ritual and get 3 red in your pool, or you can start with Manamorphose, Goblin Electromancer, and Gifts Ungiven have been added to the hand. I prefer starting with Manamorphose here, because all the times that my opponent has the Dismember, I get my red, my blue, I can play my Goblin Electromancer back on the battlefield, or I can, Manamorphose more. But that sounds... Well, actually, let's think about this. Let's slow down. So if I start with the ritual, then I guess he got 2 Manamorphose. Okay. Question is, would he still be going for it this turn if the Dismember happens? And so I don't think so. I think, here, you could Manamorphose, play the Electromancer, and then have another Manamorphose. You'd have to really hit rituals in succession there because you've used your Pyretic Ritual. So I think you're more likely to just be going like, well, let's Manamorphose into the Electromancer mana, play Electromancer, say go. Against Dismember, I think that's the best you're going to do, and you hope to survive, and you're going to survive most of the time. I mean, Ravager land kills you, but, there's not that many Ravager land, starts from an opponent who took a land with Stirring. It's just not that likely. Okay, so either way, this one's close. He leads with Pyretic Ritual, and then as soon as that resolves, you can pretty much take Gavin off of Dismember, and you're pretty much going to win this game if you can sequence these cards in a way that's logical. Let's see what happens.
Then you spend Pyretic Ritual on the stack right now, and you can see here we're going to use emblems to represent how much of each mana we've got available here, all including, and as well, the Storm count using a Vraska emblem, most appropriate. So, these Manamorphoses now being, they cost 1, but they gain 2. You're netting mana.
You're netting a mana, and with Pyretic Ritual, you're netting 2 mana because it costs 1 and adds 3. So that's actually just a Dark Ritual, so you get that out.
Yeah.
And also, worth mentioning, the reason Cedric starts trying to go off his turn is because with double Scales, double Worker in play, and an Ink Bomb Nexus, that's a little scary. If Gavin were to untap and play like a land and an Archon Ravager, he would just have 10 points of lethal infect damage right now.
Oh, wow, yeah, of course, because of that Ink Bomb Nexus here. But, I mean, I haven't played a lot of Storm, as you've said throughout the weekend. Expertise in a deck really does lend you a level of confidence that, perhaps in the booth here, sometimes we don't have when we don't have those reps. But if I'm sitting across from what Phillips is doing right now, regardless of what I'm playing, like if I'm F6 like Gavin is, I'm imagining I'm probably pretty dead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make up a percentage, but Cedric has a really good hand. I mean, Gavin doesn't know that except for, what he's seen at this point. We know that because we know that Cedric has another Manamorphose, which cycles in at some mana. He's got the Gifts and the Past in Flames. So I like Cedric's chances to go off this turn because I know Cedric's hand. But I'm not sure if it's a certainty or not. I don't play a lot of Storm.
I guess like whenever a Storm opponent goes off, I just give them the credit. Like I assume that they know what they're doing, and I assume that I'm gonna be dead.
Well, it's not strictly it would be correct for Cedric to try and go off, even if he wasn't 100% to do so. Because if he fails, he could always try and go off again next turn. He's gonna have access to Past in Flames. He's gonna have stuff in play. It's not like this is Cedric taking his shot, and if he doesn't go off this turn, then the game's over. He can see it.
That's true. With stuff like Manamorphose, of course, replenishing resources as they're built out, and then again, as you mentioned, Past in Flames, a useful way to utilize your graveyard. Here is that card, Past in Flames. So now all of a sudden, the not only the Manamorphose.
Okay, so let's see if we can pause it in a way we can see the mana.
And Pyretic Rituals, but also the Opts and the Serum Vision going to continue to draw cards, gain mana for Phillips here.
Yeah, and your Electromancer is basically free because it's going to knock a mana off the Past in Flames and the Gifts Ungiven. So that was the reason personally.
Okay, so Cedric sees that the ritual goes through with Brawls alive, great. Manamorphose, great. And now with Gifts Ungiven and Past in Flames, there's a couple ways we can play this. The amount of mana we had, so let's pull that up. So we're sitting there with 3 red, 2 blue, and our hand is Past in Flames, Gifts, and our graveyard has, as you can see, the 3 rituals we just cast, some Opts. So if we Gifts, and we're down to, so let's say we use Gifts, in the Gifts line, we go down to 1 and 1 to cast it, and we get a package that's going to probably be Pyretic, Desperate, Manamorphose, and then we have, those are going to be automatic in this spot, and then there's an important decision about what the 4th card should be, because if we're given Manamorphose, then and whatever this is, we're not going to have that much mana. We'll have 3 mana. So what is there in this list that could make this actually a viable play before we Past in Flames? If you look at the list, well, Peer Through Depths may have gotten sideboarded out. If not, it's a somewhat sketchy way of getting a ritual. It does net you a mana if you'd use it into a ritual, but we're thinning our deck of rituals. Doesn't sound great. So there's really not another ritual in the deck. So I'd be worried about that. And so, in fact, if Peer Through Depths was sided out, it's pretty rough. So going back to this, we can kind of eliminate this. I don't think we want... I just don't think we have a package that makes sense. Let's see if I can find a strike through here. Well, either way, let's delete it. Okay. So now Instead, it's Past in Flames. But what about playing Electromancer into Past in Flames? So if we play Electromancer, we'll have 2 and 1. Then if we Electromancer, then when we Past in Flames, it's only going to cost us 2 mana. So obviously we're going to need to leave a red behind. If we Past in Flames, we've got a red. Then our rituals will get us to 3, to 4, to 5. And then some of that can be blue, so we can certainly have, if we want, 3 and 2. And then at this point, so those were rituals. At this point, we can gifts, and it only costs us 2. So then we're gifting with 2 and 1. And now we're in that spot, but we've got an extra Electromancer out and an extra mana. And we have Past in Flames in the grave that only costs 3 to flash back. So here we would get this. If you're going to learn the Storm deck, this is the kind of exercise you need to do. Pyretic, Desperate, Manamorphose. Most of our gifts packages are going to contain those 3 cards as we're going off, and we have a Past in Flames. They're just very powerful, whether they go in your hand or your graveyard. This is kind of how you go off. And then now at this point, with this amount of mana, what is the last card going to be? Well, it could be a Gifts, for example, because if I get Manamorphose Gifts, then I'm perfectly happy to Manamorphose, gain a mana, Gifts, and do the same thing. And then now I can add, and then I'm pretty close to this Past in Flames is going to be lethal. In fact, I might not even be pretty close. I might just be there. I'm going to have Manamorphose putting me up to 2 and 2. So that would be down here. Let's see this. If I get Manamorphose Gifts, I'm going to 2 and 2 after Manamorphose. Even if I don't draw anything, I gifts down to 1 and 1. I go back up to 1 and 1. I can now get Past in Flames in these 3. So my second Past in Flames could be this gifts, and then a Past in Flames, and then I'm going to be able to kill my opponent. So that would be lethal. That's worth noticing. So I think playing the Electromancer does lead to what I think is a deterministic lethal line. So that's one thing certainly worth considering. But I don't think you have to. I think that you can probably also get there by using Past in Flames first. So let's look at what Cedric chooses to do.
So I thought you start with Electromancer just overall, just because it's a little harder to cast. But ultimately, Cedric's netting a lot of mana. He has access to a lot of resources, more than enough to cast Past in Flames, clearly, which means he gets to play all those cards from his graveyard again. Now, his graveyard doesn't have a million cards in it. It's got a couple ops, a couple Manamorphos, but you got to imagine that if Cedric plays all of these cards twice, including the Gifts Ungivens, he's going off this turn.
Yeah, for sure. And these Manamorphos is also going to continue to fill up the hand. I mean, these are now... this is an insane rate. 1 mana, add 2 mana, draw a card, flashback 1 mana. Like, that card is ridiculous. And that's kind of the castle that Phillips has built himself here.
Yeah, and I think this was some nice piloting by Cedric. I like not playing your Brawl on 2 because then it dies to Ballista because of the double hardened scales. But then after your opponent puts out double Arcbound Worker there and an Inkmoth Nexus, you do want to try and go off with a good hand like Cedric had. Because like I said, you don't want to lose a game to an Arcbound Ravager next turn. So, this is modern. It's turn 3. I don't love to see it, but at the same time, perfectly played by Cedric. And that's all we really can do here.
Now, Storm doesn't always kill on turn 3. In fact, I would say that it's more likely to kill you on turn 4 with a degree of reliability here. But the turn 3 kills...
All right. So Cedric's in a spot now with this gifts. I mean, Ben Stark said he played it perfectly. I don't know about that. If we conclude that Electromancer would have been a path, okay, maybe he's taking a different path towards a perfect, determined kill. Let's think about what he's going to get in this spot. So let's go back to our sheet. Here at Storm 8, it's 2 and 1, and we now have Past in Flame in the yard. And then we've got Gifts Ungiven on the stack. So we can assume our hand is bricks, and let's zero that out. Okay, so with 2 and 1 and 1 Brawl in play, we do have an Electromancer in our hand, but at this point that ship has sailed. So let's say we gifts for Pyretic, Desperate, Manamorphose, and then your standard 4th get here would be like another gift or another Past in Flame. Let's try it. Let's think about what it would look like with a Past in Flame. Okay, so the opponent, when you look at how could this go, it can go, well, typically they're not going to give you a mix of mana and something to do with the mana or cantrips. They'll either try to deny mana or flood you with mana with this type of gifts. When you get Past in Flames, they're pretty unlikely to go the flood you with mana route because, well, you'll now have 2 Passive Flames in the graveyard that cost 4. These rituals themselves generate the 4 mana you need. So I don't know that you're actually helping yourself if you're the opponent there. So let's go for mana denial because we got Past in Flames. So if we get the Past in Flames, let's gray these out for a moment. And let's say we get these. Then let's go through it. The Manamorphose nets us a mana. Let's just say we're now at 3 and 1. Even if we draw a brick, the Past in Flames that is now in our hand because we just got one. That lets us go down. That lets us Past in Flames. This Past in Flames hand. This is Manamorphose. Now with that 1, of course, we've got now Pyretic, Desperate, Manamorphose. Well, that sounds like we're going to 3 to 5 to 6, or we'll go to, why don't we go to 5 and 1, or 4 and 2. So now we're here. Storm is, 1 gifts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Storm is 6 or whatever. On top of that, 14. So we have a healthy Storm. We now have 6 mana, and we can flash back gifts. We can flash back. So let's see if we can do it deterministically. If we flash back gifts, we've now got. Well, we're paying 3 for that, so we've got 2 and 1. And now let's say we get our standard combo of this plus a Grape Shot. Or let's say we make this, well, yeah, let's say we got that. So if this is the grab. The opponent now still, again, with Past in Flames still in our graveyard. And in fact, it costs 4 because the second one now has the Past in Flames in the first one. So we have a Past in Flames in the graveyard that's now like one in our hand. And with our Storm is at 14 or 15 at this point. Even if they give us Manamorphose Grape Shot, it's lethal. Even if they don't, we'll be able to use them, whatever they do give us, flash back the other Past in Flames, get to 20 Storm, and Grape Shot our opponent. So I think we should be good here. So it looks like this is going to be a different way of a deterministic kill. It doesn't involve Electromancer, but instead it involves a gifts package at this point, and we should be lethal from here.
Especially with Gifts Ungiven, very, very possible. It's funny that the way the Storm deck has kind of evolved over the years. Used to be all about Pyromancer Ascension. Gifts Ungiven, the sort of latest piece of technology, has taken a bit of a backseat in recent months, recent years, but still a very popular deck amongst die-hard fans of old school Magic, Ben.
Yeah, Pyromancer's Ascension, definitely a good card. I guess right now, Modern's a little fast. You're not really looking to use that card in the Hogak world. This is a deck that can definitely compete with Hogak. It can go off on turn 3 or usually 4, as you mentioned, whereas Hogak's killing sometimes on 3, usually 4, as we've talked about all weekend. So about the same speed as Hogak. Definitely a deck that can compete in the Hogak world. And so I think you're seeing list geared to go off a little bit on the faster side right now, and a little less worried about resiliency, because the deck to beat is Hogak.
So Philip's now in the midst of getting underway with his Gifts Ungiven, the favorite.
All right, might
card
go to 2x here.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's his favorite card. So many years ago, you'll remember, I don't know if you will remember, actually, I remember very distinctly meeting you in Rimini at the GP in 2013 when I was just some random scrub, and Dan at the WC as well, and I had a big collection of cards that I brought over to get people to sign. And I would go up and ask people what's your favourite card, and you obviously signed the count as well. Had like Josh Adler-Layton sign Sensei's Divining Top, Craig Wesco. I didn't give him a choice, he had to sign my Judge's Familiar.
Yeah, we'll give it a sign that anyway if you gave him a choice.
Really? Is that his favorite card?
Oh, I don't know his favorite card.
I mean, it's...
Okay. So there was a little bit of probably let's recount the Storm, a little bit of a break in the game, so I sped it up a little bit. But we can see now the gifts is resolved, of course. The gifts package here, Pyretic, let's get rid of our fill. Pyretic, Desperate, Grape Shot, Remand. With 2 mana, with 8 Storm, 2 and 1. So life totals here 20, but it wouldn't be hard to find another spell to cast and get this thing to be lethal. Some wishful thinking, perhaps, though, that okay, my opponent's either going to have to give me mana, in which case I'll go off, or they'll give me Grape Shot Remand. Well, if we think about this, that's not actually how it has to go. Opponent can give us, Pyretic Ritual Remand. Is that going to let us go off? Well, we have a Past in Flame in the yard, so let's see. If it turned out that we got Pyretic, and we got Remand. And of course, this is hard to, it's hard. This is stuff that you need to do your homework. You're not going to want to try to solve this over the board if you're playing a Storm deck. You gotta know this stuff ahead of time. So that's what we're doing here. I'm trying to show you how to do that. So if you were to get these, the Pyretic would send you to 9 Storm and 4 red. And then you would have to flash your Past in Flames. You'd be at 10. You would now have a single red to Past in Flames from the yard. And then from there, you now have Pyretic and Desperate. So that would be Storms 11 and 12, sending you to 3 and 5 mana. Now with that 5 mana, you'll notice there's not a Manamorphose in the package, and there's not one in the graveyard because they've both been flashed back. So with that 5 mana, I mean, we can Grape Shot from the yard and kind of clean up some of the Arcbound Worker mess. But I don't know that that's it. We're not going to actually kill them with this setup. There just simply isn't enough in the graveyard, specifically because it doesn't make blue mana. And we would have to get all the way down here using a flashback Past in Flame. So there's actually arguably 2 mistakes here. There's the fact that the package doesn't include Manamorphose, and there's the fact that it doesn't include Past in Flames. 2 cards that are fairly difficult for your opponent to give you, but really there was a couple correct packages, and maybe we didn't talk about this. Maybe Manamorphose Gifts. This might also get you there, because if you get Gifts Manamorphose, you can kind of maybe get back to par with it. We'd have to look at that separately. I don't think it's going to be super relevant because we found a path that gets there, and we see that Cedric's path doesn't. Okay, so let's see where he does end up. Let's see what Gavin does as well.
Yeah. But no, Dr. Carsten, when I asked him, he said, have you got a copy of Gifts Ungiven? I did not. I went and got one for him, and he signed. I've still got it to this day.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
That's a nice collection. Getting a bunch of Hall of Famers and big pros to sign their favorite card. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, Ralph Levy has the Llanowar Elves, Reed Duke, Bonfire of the Damned, Willie Adel with Blood Red Elf.
Is this the first smear on Reed's perfect identity? His favorite card is Bonfire of the Damned?
No. Sorry, he didn't have the choice there. I gave him that one because remember that time when he was playing this one was legal in Standard. He was playing with Miracles, and there was coverage of him at GP where he would slow roll every draw. he'd pick up the card, put it in front of him, separate to his hand, look at it, put it back down, and then add it to his hand. And me and my friends thought it was so funny, so I got him to sign that.
All right, I'll accept that explanation. Yeah, we're competitive players. You got to play what you got to play. But if Reed Duke raised his hand and I said, Reed, what's your favorite card? And he said Bloodfire of the Damned, I would be quite disappointed.
You'd have some stern questions for him.
Yeah, I'd be very disappointed.
No, I think it's going to be some kind of junk card.
Oh yeah,
sure.
agreed. Which is totally respectable.
Absolutely.
Thoughtseized, Tarmogoyf, Dark Confident by all means. But yeah.
Fire of the Damned?
Yeah.
Oh, no. All right, here's Gift Ungiven now. And Verhey is figuring out how he wants to split it. Pretty typical pile. We see this pretty regularly. 3 rituals and a Remand. Well, the Remand is kind of the outlier. Oh, sorry, it's a Grape Shot, excuse me. So often you'll see Past in Flames up in the mix, but there's already one in the bin, so he doesn't need another one.
Yeah, I didn't want to say Cedric was definitely going to win because I wasn't 100% sure, but I did know this was a really good hand that he was going off with, and it does look like he's just going.
Uh-oh. So the train has come off the rails here. Gavin finds take a ritual and a Remand. The Remand is sort of stranded here, right? I mean, how does Cedric keep going? Well, let's see.
Going off pretty comfortably. We're not counting it. There's just not really any reason to do that. Cedric's got this covered. He's just going to keep playing all his spells, and then he'll Grape Shot for as much as he can. And I got to believe he's going to deal 20 this turn. I don't really think this is a game. If Gavin had a removal spell, he would have killed Baral in response to one of the first rituals. I mean, maybe there's some really surprising cards Gavin could have in hand that would, I don't know, give him Hexproof or something, but I really doubt it with 1 green mana up. I think we're just going to see Cedric continue to play spells and then Grape Shot for the win.
Now, Past in Flames, does its flashback cost also get reduced by Baral?
Yes.
It does, okay. So it's only going to cost 4 mana here.
Yeah, but cards do get exiled when you play them from your graveyard.
Yeah. So it looks like Phillips is going to flashback the Past in Flames here.
But even if Cedric doesn't have quite enough damage for lethal, even if somehow this fizzles out, again, he can always just Grape Shot away those workers. I guess he has to be able to do something about the Nexus, or it'll get, the counters from them.
He's got a Braid in hand.
Oh, okay. Well, then if he can just kill those 2 workers and the Nexus this turn...
I mean, what is Verhey's response, right? Yeah, what is the reply to that next turn?
But also, I would just assume he could deal lethal from this point, but I'm not really sure. It looks like he's got, 4 red mana, 1 blue mana, and a spell count of 9? It's hard to imagine he's fizzled out, but he is slowing down. I'm not really sure what the problem is here. He doesn't have a ton of blue mana available. He has played all his Manamorphoses already, so he might not be able to do enough spells.
All right, opt now. Scry 1. See if you like to look at the one on top here. Cedric Phillips, of course, well known for his role as a Magic caster for the SCG circuit.
Yeah, and so I almost hope this happens. I don't know whether Cedric's going to deal 20 this turn or not, but let's assume he can. The right play might end up being grape shotting both workers. Gavin will activate the Nexus to get the counters on them, and then Cedric could abrade the Nexus. So that could be something really interesting that occurs. Whoa, Cedric just passed the turn? I'm not sure what's going on anymore.
Just didn't have it.
Yeah, but like he could have still...
Okay, so Cedric notices that the Past in Flames from the graveyard costs 5, and it's going to leave him with only basically Ritual Grape Shot and not something more, spicy. That's a ritual grape shot rather. That's a problem. Now, with an abrade in hand, it does mean grape shot both your workers, abrade your nexus, and kind of reset things. Cedric says, well, before we get there, let me see if I can opt. Let's say I hit one of my last 2 mana Morphoses, then I'm in the clear. If I hit a grape shot, maybe that's good enough. So, although actually using the blue on the opt, then I guess a grape shot isn't enough. But goes for the opt, doesn't see anything relevant, draws a second Baral, in fact. And then at that point, there's no mana to, the only play available at that point is Abrade from the hand, killing one of the workers, which doesn't really accomplish much. So Cedric has to say go. Pretty costly sequence of events there that I think, playing the Baral turn 2, I don't think that's anything like a punt. I think that's a tough judgment call. I prefer that. I think that when it gets dismembered, you're actually not that upset about it because dismember was likely to get you anyways. But that one's close, and maybe holding the Baral is actually better. I mean, it's certainly possible. But the gifts packages is where this game really came off the rails, and it just shows, I think, that you want to spend some time preparing for, okay, with this much mana and this in my graveyard, how could I win with empty graveyard in that amount? Okay, what if I have a stocked graveyard? You can use this game as kind of an entryway into that analysis, and so if you're interested in learning about how Storm works, and it is more relevant now with Hagak Ban, it always ebbs and flows. But in general, so this is the kind of thing, if you're doing preparation for a tournament, and it's also healthy. I mean, you might play against Storm. You remember, Gavin had to look at this. You have to figure out gifts packages. If you want to be serious and competitive in Modern, you got to understand how the Storm deck works, whether you ever intend to play Storm or not. You're going to have to split those gifts packages. You're going to have to resolve your Inquisition of Kozilek against Storm. Understand where the bottlenecks are. Understand what the sequencing is. How to resolve gifts. So Cedric here in this exhibition match, it's not a big deal. Who cares? But he wasn't able to execute the kill. He'll have to probably go to a game 3 here or somehow salvage this. But I wanted to just walk you through that and show you how we can slow the things down, think about it a little bit more in a more structured way, and then this is all homework we can do, and then we have the kind of tools to go, oh, bad things happen if I don't put Manamorphose or Past in Flames into my stack. I'm kind of relying on a bad split or that sort of thing. So that's been Magic the Gathering for advanced players. If you got questions, throw them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.